I've analyzed 500 games of Riftbound played in the Spiritforged season to let you know decidedly if it's better to go first or second. I'm Simon from Games Deconstructed, and let's get started! Now, this video is a follow-up to a similar analysis that I did for Origins a couple of months ago, so it's not like we are working with fully unknown quantities here. But to build expectations for this new one, and so you don't have to watch that old one, let's see what we found out then. Across a sample of 440 games, we found that going first carried with it a 54.77% win rate. This allowed us to prove with 96.5% certainty that there was a first player advantage. Through applying further statistical tools, ones called confidence intervals, we established the true first player win rate in these games to lie somewhere between 50.12% and 59.42%, though likely closer on either side to that original 54.8% number. The result that we are hoping for now is for the sample of Spiritforged games to show significantly more or less of a first player advantage, or for us to be able to pinpoint its existence and size more accurately. And I'll tell you right now that both one of those first two and that second one did happen, and you'll get to learn all about them in a sec. So my initial expectation, based on both past observations in Origins season as well as playing the game myself, is that there is an advantage to going first in the game. To understand that better, let's very briefly go over the rules around and differences between going first and second. And if you already know most or all of this, don't worry, I'm gonna be super quick, not belabor the obvious here. In a best of 3, the player who wins the die roll before game 1 gets to decide if they'll go first or second. In the following games of the match, the loser of the previous game gets to make that same choice. In an overwhelmingly high percentage of scenarios, over 98% in our Spiritforged sample, the player afforded that selection will choose to go first. That means that in a full best of 3, a series of 3 games, the player who wins the die roll will get to go first twice, most likely. Now, in terms of what difference that actually makes under the hood, the obvious main one is that the second player gets an additional rune on their first turn, starting from 3 compared to the first player's 2. That gives them immediate access to 3 drops, or the ability to play a 2-drop and something for 1. 2-drop plus Recruit in Victor, 2-cost equipment plus Sun Soldier in Azir, 2-drop plus Stacked Deck in purple, to give you a couple of examples. That rune difference is compounding, meaning that the player going second will also have access to 1 more rune on their second turn, third turn, so on and so forth, provided that both players recycle at roughly the same rate. However, there is no guarantee that the game is going to afford both players the same number of turns. Let's say we start game 3 of our best of 3, me against you, in termination already, so we will only get to play 3 turns. You'll start, get 2 runes, my first turn I'll be on 3, your second turn you'll be on 4, and then the match ends. You had access to 6 runes overall, I only had 3. So my theoretical rune advantage from going second remained theoretical. And going first is gonna point towards you being able to win more quickly, even outside of termination scenarios, because it affords you additional tempo. That's the speed with which you are moving towards winning the game. That tempo stems from you being able to play your 2-drops first, ready them up first, likely conquer with them first, barring some deckhand sneakiness, which can happen when you're playing against decks like Aurelia. But apart from that, you will likely be ahead on points and able to win faster than your opponent. Their objective is going to be to catch up and eventually try to overtake you using those additional runes, but it's kind of a feedback loop in that they need those runes to not lose, but they also need to not lose to get access to those additional runes. So ultimately, it's a matter of finding out if these two sides of the equation balance out or not. Is the access to 1 more rune per turn plus the slightly more impressive turn 1 better than the extra tempo afforded to the player going first? And the current state of the game is such that going first has an impact not just on win rate, but also on players' approaches towards playing the game. Let's take battlefields. Most decks, out of the 3 battlefields available to them, will have a designated going first, going second, and going in blind battlefield. The ones you would prefer going first are most likely ones with conquer effects, or when I defend effects, because you'll be able to make use of them, most likely against Sneaky Deckhand, before your opponent does. Obelisk of Power is another battlefield that's played very mindfully, allowing you to plan out whether you'll be starting on 3 or 4 and take that into account in your mulligan decisions, for example. And some decks may go even further, basing their sideboarding decisions on whether they will be going first or second. A decently widespread and pretty recognizable one is certain Irelia builds siding Sneaky Deckhands in and out depending on their expected starting rune total. Now, having all that in mind, I got to work gathering data. As I did in the previous projects, the games here are a mixture of my own, games played by my friends in our local Nexus nights, and games I arduously scraped from VODs of streamer play or tournament coverage. As a result, the data you're going to see here leans slightly more competitive. It's not all regional top cut level or anything. I would say it should be broadly applicable to like Nexus Night to regional day 1 level. Anything below or above, your mileage may vary. Now, gathering that data was a good bit of work, so if you're enjoying the video so far, I would greatly appreciate if you subscribed and left a like on the video. Thank you very much. And the results we gathered are as follows. Out of 500 games, the player who got to choose only chose to go second 7 times, meaning that 98.6 games had the player choosing to go first. Out of the same 500, the player going first won 288 games. The player going second took the W in the remaining 212. That's 57.6% win rate going first. Initially appears to be higher than the 54.77 that we've seen for Origins. To give some context to that number, we will have to add 2 others to it. The first is significance. It's a statistical concept that measures how unlikely it is for the results that we see here to appear randomly, as just kind of a freak coincidence. It increases with the scale of the effect that we observe, because it's harder to get an 80% win rate randomly than, say, 51, but also with the sample size, because it's easier to randomly get a weird result in 100 games than it is in 1000. With us using 500 games compared to the previous experiment's 440, we would expect slightly more significance. And for our 500 games, our confidence in first player win rate being better than 50-50 is 99.3%. That means that we are 99.3% sure that the first player win rate is actually not a result of random chance, it's not 50-50, and what we see here did not occur randomly. Bear in mind, this is not a 99% chance that first player win rate is exactly what we've observed, the 57.6%, just that it's not 50-50. To pinpoint where specifically the true actual first player win rate lies, we will have to add another component to this. One called confidence intervals. A minimum and maximum value for which we can say with 95% certainty or above that, hey, the truth, somewhere between these 2 points. For Origins, these were 50.12%, the minimum, and 59.42%, the maximum. For Spiritforged, the current analysis, 53.27 and 61.93. So we can say with near certainty that first player advantage is no smaller than 3.27% and no bigger than nearly 12%, which would be kind of bad. Now, since there's a good bit of overlap between these 2 sets of confidence intervals, we cannot say with certainty that the problem has grown since Origins. What I do feel comfortable saying is that we are about 83% sure that it hasn't grown smaller since Origins, and that the new minimum that we've established here is at least plus 3.2% win rate in favor of the player going first. Now, I wanted to dive even deeper than this, so I took a look at specific decks in the sample. Across the 1000 players in there, there's 2 decks that were played enough for them to be able to form kind of smaller samples of their own. Draven appeared in 156 games and Irelia in 135. Now, grain of salt here, both of these samples are roughly 4 times smaller than the entire thing, so the results are bound to be substantially swingier. I would treat the numbers I'm about to show you with a good dose of critical thinking, maybe more so an indication of a trend, high versus low, big versus small, rather than actual concrete numbers. So Draven shows a slightly better win rate compared to the average on both the play and the draw. 60.8% going first, 43.1% going second. But the difference between these two values is larger for Draven than it is for the rest of the sample, suggesting that Draven cares about going first more than other decks. Irelia is interestingly on the other end of the spectrum. Her win rates are very positive, around 60%, both going first and second. Now, from recent memory, I do recall that a lot of the games in our sample had the streamer on Irelia playing against random opponents on other legends. And that could be happening more so for the Blade Dancer compared to the other decks in the sample, and in this case it would make sense for me that the difference in player skill would be more of a factor than first player advantage. That's of course based on the assumption, which might very well not be true, that those streamers were more experienced than random players on TCG Arena. However, if that's not the case, it would suggest that Irelia is more resilient to going second, perfectly able to win games from either position. To summarize all that, I can say with near certainty that there is a first player advantage in the current meta. The size of it is likely no smaller than plus 3.2% and likely no bigger than 12%. Another thing I can confirm is that it's way more likely than not that it hasn't grown smaller since Origins. And personally, I find that quite interesting, cause the games of Spiritforged that I play, they felt less reliant on going first. They felt very decision dense and eventful in the sense of that there was a lot happening in them. But perhaps that feeling of there being a lot happening does more to obfuscate the first player advantage rather than fix the problem. And of course these findings are applicable to the broad averaged out meta, not necessarily to your specific deck against your specific opponents, cause as we've seen, for Draven it's kind of a big deal if he gets to go first, whereas something like Irelia doesn't care about it to the same degree. I've been Simon from Games Deconstructed. If you've watched the entire thing, I would like to ask you to leave a flower emoji alongside any comment you might like to leave, and please do, because I very much enjoy reading those. Thanks a lot for watching, and a special thank you to the Patreon supporters over on patreon.com/gamesdeconstructed, especially Zofia Cywoniuk, Michał Gawalkiewicz, and Maciej Majka. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.